Today, I'm going to talk about what's wrong with niceness. Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. So, to start off, I want to actually just read the etymology of the word nice. It's itself quite interesting. It's undergone some major shifts in meaning to the sort of hard to exactly say what it even means now, although I'm going to get to that in a moment. Okay. From the late 13th century, foolish, ignorant, frivolous, senseless, from the Old French nice, in the 12th century, careless, clumsy, weak, poor, needy, simple, stupid, silly, foolish, which came from the Latin nescius, meaning ignorant, unaware, literally not knowing from the ne, not prefix, and scire, or scire, to know, which is the root, actually, similar root to science, by the way. So it went from essentially timid or faint-hearted in the pre-1300s to, in the late 14th century, fussy or fastidious, to, 14th century, to around 1400 meaning dainty or delicate. In the 1500s, it gets to more like precise and careful, which the etymology source I'm looking at suggests you can see in either like a nice distinction or nice and early. And to, in the late 1700s, agreeable and delightful, in the 1800s, to kind and thoughtful. In modern parlance, it has a sort of generic feel to it in a lot of ways. It's sort of generically pleasant. And there's actually a really interesting distinction between nice and polite that I once saw, which I can't track down, so I can't credit the source of it. But it was that a polite man never offends without intending to. A nice man never intends to offend. And I think there's a lot to be said for that distinction. It's useful, anyway, for the moment. That a nice man is somebody who is very pleasant. Now, nice can range anywhere from pleasant to simply inoffensive. And in a lot of cases, people use the word nice, like a person's nice. Yeah, they're nice, to mean approximately inoffensive, and then just having that social benefit that human beings have because we're social animals and like having other people around us. So, like, this pillow is inoffensive. It causes no harm, but it doesn't give us any social feelings of belonging or anything like that. So there's nothing, especially pleasant about it. Whereas another human being kind of does. Now, I'm not really going to get into the whole, like, nice guy thing related to dating. The things I say will bear on it, but the one thing I will say there is the way people use that term about, like, nice guys varies wildly in meaning. So anytime you look at a discussion of this, you need to be careful to see what the heck do people even mean. A lot of people sort of talk past each other. For example, a lot of people will use the term nice guy to refer to somebody who has no other positive qualities but being nice. Which is to say they're inoffensive, they're mildly pleasant, or they want to please, or something along those lines. But the problem is that they don't have any particular means of pleasing. They're not knowledgeable about anything. They're not witty. They're not much of anything other than they like want to please, but don't really have much of a way of doing it. That's one usage. I've seen a bunch of different usages. Some people contrast nice guys simply as anybody who is reasonably along the lines of what they should be, contrasted with like the bad boys who are just, vicious in the sense of having many vices. And so I've seen that distinction as well. I'm going to make a whole video actually about bad boys. It's an interesting subject I won't get into. But so you can see the way that nice is used here can be sort of all over the place. The sense I really want to talk about it is the sense of that being inoffensive, of wanting to please. And the problem with niceness is that there are, using the distinction I made earlier about a polite person never offends without intending to, a nice person never intends to offend, is that there are times, unfortunately, in this life when you should intend to offend people. They don't come up a lot. They're not common. But there are times when it actually is important to stand for something and to be unpleasant for another person to be around. As I said, this isn't like the typical thing. This isn't normal. But the problem with being nice is that you will do what you shouldn't in order to stay pleasant. It is very, very easy to essentially lie to people, to be unwilling to talk about things that you should talk about, or to straight up lie, or to get along. And those are really a problem. That in that case, niceness consists of not having a backbone. So, and I sort of come back to, like, how did we get to the current meaning of pleasant? And you can sort of see that progression, actually, historically. It went from, ignorant, and foolish to, eventually to things like fastidious. And that kind of makes sense. Like, a person who doesn't know what he should be doing might worry about the things that he should not worry about. And he will spend overmuch effort on things that don't matter. And so you can see that kind of thing, going from ignorant to doing the sort of thing an ignorant person might do, which then carries over to, being more about those things than about the fact the person is ignorant, and an ignorant person, that is, a person ignorant of what they should be doing, is doing things that they shouldn't be, to, like, fastidious. Because, a person who is, like, overly fastidious, who's really, like, neat and tidy, all out of proportion to what they should be doing, or to what makes any sense, will still at least produce things that are well made. They will do things, they'll make their clothing up very nicely, or something along those lines. And once you build up that association, you start to get the sort of positive sense of a person who has a certain vice, like they spend too much time and effort on things that are not worth it, will have some sort of incidental or accidental virtues. So they are doing what they shouldn't, but they will do certain things well, just of its nature to have to do that. And so that positive side you can see, and then start to value, and then eventually you get that kind of positive thing. And it is very, very helpful to have a generic positive term where you're not really committing yourself to any strong interpretation of what's good about this. There's something like softly, generally positive, and that's as far as you want to go. So there are benefits to being nice, but the problem is it actually doesn't get you very far, even along those benefits. So as distinct from politeness, so it is very good to be polite. And actually, as my friend Ed Lattimore said, I really liked his phrasing. One of the things he learned growing up in some very rough housing projects is there are no circumstances that being polite makes worse. And I really loved his careful phrasing, because, politeness only does so much. Like Thomas More in A Man for All Seasons, when his wife asked him to smile, he said, "Whatever may be done by smiling, you may rely on me to do." There's only so much that can be done by it. Some things actually can. Similarly with manners. Good manners can make some situations better, can make some situations a little bit better. Some situations it doesn't really matter in. But it often can help somewhat. Being merely nice, that is to say, wanting to please, it can be pleasant. And there are circumstances where you should be pleasant to people. When you're just, sharing a meal with people, it's good to just be pleasant to them, especially people you don't know very well. You generally want to be very nice to children, for example. There are times when you can't be, when they do something wrong. You have to be, the authority figure who makes them stop hitting somebody, or stop breaking something, or stop stealing something, or whatever it is. But, you often want to be nice, although even that illustrates how, like, there are very much limits to it. But more than being nice, you want to develop those natural virtues that allow you to do the goal of being nice. So the thing about being nice, of wanting to please, is that it's only really effective if you can do it through some means. If you can be witty, or if you can be informative about, in helpful ways rather than in pedantic or extremely obscure sorts of ways. If you can, another thing that goes along with this, that is sometimes mistaken for niceness, or because niceness can do the same sort of role, and I'm using here niceness meaning like the desire to please, is patience. So in difficult circumstances, a person exercising the virtue of patience will be easy to get along with. They will not be complaining, or sometimes what can be helpful, actually, if a group is going through something that's difficult, you can actually serve a useful function by complaining in a joking manner. So that is to say, by making jokes that are complaints, but they are primarily funny and will make people laugh, it can serve the dual function of voicing the fact that there is some dissatisfaction, so people feel like that part is being recognized, but at the same time turns the attention from what's negative into something positive, into that sort of mirth or happiness. It can be overdone, of course, but it can be very useful and can really help people deal with a more difficult circumstance. So again, merely wanting to please doesn't get you very far. You need to put in the work to be actually able to please, and the things that will please. Now, I need to throw in an asterisk. You want to be able to please people who will be pleased by things they should be pleased by. It's a fallen world. There are plenty of people who will be pleased by all sorts of things they should not be, who would very happily enjoy things that make their life worse, and you don't want to be the person who provides that. A nice person might well be. In fact, it's a nice person might well, help somebody. To take an extreme example, like with their drug habit, a nice person might well, help somebody in, overeating foods they shouldn't eat in a chronic sort of way, not like, it's Christmas, it's Easter, go ahead and eat as much chocolate as you want. One day will not do anything no matter what, assuming you're not diabetic, et cetera, et cetera. But so, it's a highly contextual thing. But if your goal is to please people, that will take a lot of time. If your goal is overly much to please people in your life, let me be a little more clear there, then you won't develop that ability to please people, because you won't have the material with which to do it. You won't have the skills. You won't have, the habits, the background, etc. In order to actually please people well, you have to spend a lot of time doing things that aren't pleasing to people at all, that don't even involve people for the most part, that refine your skills and improve your ability to do that thing. So, to a great degree, the trouble with niceness, the thing that's wrong with niceness, is that it is supposed to come sort of at the tail end of all sorts of things that aren't nice. They are the things that allow you to be nice. And when it is taken as any sort of primary good, it leads you astray and tends to lead you both into things that you shouldn't do and away from being able to do the things that you should do. So, niceness is, so it's good to please, contextually speaking, it is often good to please people. But that kind of necessarily has to be a minority of your life if you want to be any good at it, because you have to spend time and effort, whether it's giving things to people, you need to have them in order to give. And so you need to spend time and effort making things in order to give them away, or earning things or whatever. But, like the Blessed Pierre Toussaint said, he's a great guy. I recommend reading about his life. Hasn't been canonized, but he's on his way there, and he lived. He was born a slave in Haiti, and he wound up in old New York, and eventually he died a very rich man, a free man, a very rich man. He's a hairdresser to wealthy socialites of New York. He was an extremely skilled hairdresser and made a lot of money. And at one point, this is why I brought him up. Someone asked him, Monsieur Toussaint, you're so wealthy, why do you keep working? And he said, Madam, if I did not keep working, I would not have enough for others. if you want to be able to give things, you have to have them in order to give them, and you have to put in the work in order to have them so that you may give them away. It's, you know, you could, your parents could be the ones who made the things, and you give away what your parents made or something like that. It's not, 100%, but for the most part, unless you happen to be in the very happy circumstance of just having tons and tons of stuff that you didn't work for, in order to have things to give away, you're going to have to work for it, whether that is wit, whether that is the ability to, even if you're just a person who's like really good at making references to the things that people know, you have to spend a lot of time knowing them. You have to spend time doing things like getting enough rest that your wit is sharp. You have to spend time doing things like thinking of these things so you make the appropriate connections in your head and practice these things and get good at them. You have to do things like paying attention to how it works. You're not pleasing people while you are paying attention to the reactions of different people and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and adjusting accordingly, refining your skills over time. All of these things are not merely being nice, they're doing other things. And so that's the trouble with niceness. It's like a flower and a plant. The flower in a plant is the prettiest part of the plant. It is the most pleasing part of the plant, but you need that entire plant in order to support this, or you won't have a flower. So, contextually good, limited contexts in which it is contextually good. Life is mostly other things, and you have to be really careful that it doesn't lead you astray, because there are a lot more important things than being nice. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at. If you like this video, then clicking the like button, according to YouTube, will make them more likely to recommend it to others. If you know anyone who might get something out of this video, then it would be kind to share it with them, or just share it on social media in general. And if you'd like to see future videos of mine, you can subscribe. And if you're not in the habit of checking your subscriptions page regularly, then I suggest clicking the notification bell and setting that to always, because otherwise subscribing to a channel basically just sort of like gives YouTube a hint that maybe it should consider recommending these videos to you, possibly at some point, if they think so. It's a funny world we live in. God bless.